over the years from other people. But all the roof leaks and all the lights out and all of that stuff, the director reports directly to my office. So if anything goes above any of those areas, they come to me, then it becomes my responsibility. So very wide scope. The last piece I wanted to talk about is I'm over school security. Okay, once again, preface, over doesn't mean actually running day to day. I work with the people who actually do that. So our current in Norman Public Schools SRO officers, also I'm working directly with the Norman Police Department and the SRO program that will be starting up next year, which could be its own presentation in itself for PTA to answer any questions you may have. But I will say that I have complete faith, having been in multiple districts with SRO programs, when this comes to fruition beginning next year, we will have a model SRO program and probably the best trained officers in the nation working with kids, because the officers are already taking classes with our special education teachers. They're taking classes in school training, how to work with kids of all different kinds, and also understanding their role in the school is not an administrator. Their role is not really law enforcement. It is there to be in the classrooms, build relationships, and then God forbid if something does come up, that's when their opportunity they would need to step in. But it's been a side-by-side growth and development process over the last year plus in getting ready for what's going to happen next year, which is going to be great. So once again, could be another presentation. The reason I am here is to talk about emergency management. In just this year, we appointed Jerry Prevett. Some of you may know him. He used to be the principal at Irving Middle School, and now he runs our energy management program in the district, which has literally saved us, I think, $1.7 million over the last few years in energy costs. Now that that's kind of running itself, he's stepped into the safety security, helping me with that, but making sure, you know, our schools are doing their drills, making sure everything is right with all the construction going on around the district. Things are changing day to day, and principals need that help and someone to reach out to come in and look at things. Jerry also works with David Grizzle, you know, in the community to help us with our safe plans in the school, whether it is a tornado or a weather event or something at another level. So we just recently put that position in place and really making some strides there and getting a lot of training. So when it comes to weather issues, and I think that's what you wanted me to truly address, I'm also that person that's out at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. with our Director of Transportation and Central Services, driving different bus routes, not just the main roads, the back roads, the side roads, the bus stops, where when we get those calls when we've called off school and people are angry, I can get around town just fine. Yeah, but you weren't going to be that kindergartner standing on a corner for 20 minutes on ice waiting for a bus slipping down the road on the side road that hasn't been cleared. So we are that. I am that person that works directly with Dr. Ciano and kind of makes that recommendation one way or another. We are blessed in Norman to have incredible collaborations between everything from fire to the NPD to the National Weather Service, OU meteorologists. You know, we get exact same reports that David Boren gets at the exact same time on making decisions. We think, you know, we actually dictate what he does, because we always seem to jump out right in front of him and he seems to follow us on closing things down. So with that said, I really don't know where to go with this except to say with emergency situations, starting with severe cold weather, want to talk about, we don't have like a rubric where we have a point scale on whether or not we're going to close school, because honestly there's a lot of feel to it as well. And our community is so different. We have Lakeview that's way, way east, and then we have schools south and way north, and every one of them could be experiencing something different simultaneously when it comes to weather, even snow, right? So we have to make a decision on what's going to affect the majority the most. And sometimes it's not always, in some people's mind, the best decision, but every decision we make is based on what is, you know, students first, what's the safest thing for students as a whole, and we'll take the angry people, because you know what, that's just part of it. people will get over it and move on. But we do drive the roads. I'm a transparent person as well, so if you ask me a question, be ready for the answer. I've learned from Bria. So we do get out, severe weather when it's snowy or cold, icy, we get out and actually physically drive the roads. We physically talk to the meteorologists, what are the forecasts? And then we make a decision. We have a gathering. Can we get parking lots clear? Is it safe for high school students? Is it safe for middle school students? Is it safe for walkers? Is it safe for bus riders? Are the back roads and the side roads, which aren't the highest priority for street cleaners, they're lower on the totem pole when it comes to getting cleaned, are those areas safe? And can we really say that all our kids are going to be able to get to school safely and leave school safely? There may be a forecast that's saying it's coming in at 11 o'clock. Now, we know how that works, but we really have to make a decision, an informed decision, based on information we get from experts in the area, because we are not experts in that area. We are not. We are what we want to say, humanistic people who care about kids and are experts in what we do for schools. So we have to make a decision, sometimes popular, sometimes not. We do invest a lot of time in making those decisions. School, cold weather, bad weather, while school is in session, we will never release school early. Just telling you. Will not. Okay? We'll hold kids as long as we need to. It's a safe place. They're not hurt staying. Okay? A lot of people get upset with that, which is fine also. But it is more dangerous to send kids home when there's not a parent. You cannot assure that someone is waiting for them at home. You cannot assure that every parent got the message that we're releasing school early. The one thing we do have, and it's in our policy books, that if at any time any parent wants to call and check their kid out, they don't feel safe, it's a weather thing, it will not count against them. It will either be principal or superintendent excused. So if you want to come get your kid because of weather, great. Now, if it's just some random thing and we know you're making it up, we're going to call you on it. But in those situations, every parents have to be able to make a decision based on what they feel and want to do for their family. And who are we to say, no, you can't, and it's going to hurt your child academically? Really? No. You have that ability. Okay? So that kind of talks about, speaks to the cold weather situation. When it comes to tornadoes, very high winds, even if it's not a tornado, we're in a tough spot because we have some schools that are just completely, honestly, not safe to be in. You're in one right now. But we have had David Grizzle and a group of people. They've come through and actually evaluated every single school we have and identified the safest places in our schools, and we've worked with principals, and those have been adjusted with current construction and pending instruction, like here. But for example, here we have done 1 or 2 drills this year. Correct?
We've done 1 to Alcott this year.
Yeah,
We've done them for years.
Yeah,
now.
but we actually shift the students over to Alcott because we are lucky to know that we do have warnings, we do have time, and we have a mechanism in place that allows us to come over, pick up every student. Alcott has some great safe locations on that campus, and we take the students over there, and it works really smoothly. So once again, that's just one example of what we're doing. Now through the bonds, as we have the opportunity, we are actually building safe rooms, talking about here. The bond is going to build a new front to this office, which is needed, the facade. City council people, I strongly believe the city is only as good as the schools are, and vice versa. And I also think your high schools are a 5-year predictor, non-scientifically, of what your community is going to be in 5 years. So something to think about. There's my political statement. But we, based on people smarter than us in emergency management, with people smarter than us in emergency management, have tried to make the wisest decisions we can. And through the bonds, and the next bond will actually come up, we are trying to build FEMA-rated safe rooms in all our schools. We don't have the money, just being completely honest. We couldn't even afford to do it everywhere right now. There's no way, with everything else that needs to be done too. But we are hitting those schools that are highest priority. schools that have to leave their campus to be safe. Our middle schools will all have safe rooms by the end of this, safe, really strong rated safe rooms. High schools are large buildings, a lot of interior areas, so they are fairly safe at this point in time. We'd love to be able in the next bond to come in and build a gymnasium like Westmore has and a couple of the other schools that will house the entire population that's a FEMA rated area. With that said though, we're as communicative as we can. We have district-wide radio channels we get on when severe weather starts. Craig knows about it, and I can talk to everybody in the district over the radio. We don't have to worry about cell towers or anything else. So we have a lot of tools at our disposal that are disposable too, I guess. And we're trying to systematically use them in the best way possible. In just a minute, I'll ask for questions. So with that said, we have a lot of moving pieces as a district our size does, and I think we've done a fairly good job. I'm not going to say it's perfect. I'm not ever going to say it's great, because it never will be perfect or great. It's a dynamic process. It is a dynamic process, and when you have 16,000 independent thinkers, plus 1,200 teachers, and then a community of 1.5 parents per 16,000, you've got a lot of input, you've got a lot of people wanting it their way individually, and we try to meet everybody's needs as much as we possibly can. So does anyone have any questions? I'm just kidding.
I know you have to leave soon, yes, and if anyone has any questions that need to be asked after mine, the wait list for a while, can they email you?
Absolutely, okay. Absolutely. So district website, it's nickm@norman.k12.ok.us.
I love how accessible our district is. Yep. I really do. They're easy to reach.
Here you go. Here's my cell phone, 779-6652.
I have it too, if you didn't write that. Dr. Nick, what I wanted to ask you is, we're obviously preparing for tornadoes. What are we doing to prepare for earthquakes?
Right, so we have not done any preparation, for the most part, for earthquakes unless a principal has done it on their own. But it is on our radar. Okay. So to date, we have not done things, but we will. And the big thing is, around here, there are protocols set out for earthquakes across the United States in different areas, but there's not an official adopted one. It's kind of like the seat belts on buses issue. We have seat belts on every one of our buses, believe it or not, but there is no standard for seat belts on buses, so we don't know if ours are right or wrong. So it's a kind of as needed use basis, right? Same with that. We want to make sure we do the right thing, kind of make the right decision the first time, as opposed to do something and then go, well, that wasn't.
So we are looking into
absolutely,
it. Okay.
Absolutely. So I think it's on the next principle. So
well, no, it might be. We have one next week. It probably is. Yeah. That was full.
That was it. That was easy.
I have a question. Can you take us through the thought process when we have either a cold weather day that's getting worse? We start off the day in school, or even a severe weather tornado type day that we maybe didn't necessarily cancel school because it was a bad day in the afternoon or evening. Can you take us through the process behind which the notification comes out telling parents that they can come pick their kids up in the middle of the day, that it won't be an excused absence? That seems to that it won't be an unexcused absence. Right. I misspoke. But I've heard lots of stories about how that message creates more havoc and danger than I can imagine not sending. You already told us that that every parent has the right to come get their kid if they don't feel safe. But the broadcasting of the message that it will be an excused absence seems to invite parents to come get their kids that might not have done otherwise.
Absolutely.
And creates a more dangerous situation, especially with kids at the high school.
Right. And this is the last question because
Sorry.
you guys
I do have to go. So it's a good question, and we get as much feedback on that. First of all, we try to be a very communicative district, because those people who complain about it, they're actually that same number who are appreciative of it. So you walk that line. The other piece I mentioned earlier, we expect parents to be able to be parents, okay? And you have to be a parent. Sometimes you have to tell your child no. Sometimes you can tell them yes, and we depend on parents And let's talk the high school in particular. A lot of students drive. Well, they still have to check out. They call their parents. If a parent wants them to be able to go home, they should have that ability to tell their child, yes, I will check you out. And they do, and that kid or child can go home. Or they can tell their child, no, I would rather you stay at school. End of story. Done. So we expect parents to be able to make those decisions and hopefully have those conversations as you're watching the news 2, 3, 4, 5 days earlier, knowing that a weather system is probably going to come through. Is there a perfect answer? You know what, we'll get the same things as, why didn't you let us know? Even though it's in board policy, it's in all these things that you can check your kid out anytime you want, we feel like it's our responsibility, and Dr. Sayano's philosophy, that we are going to communicate with parents. And we are going to take the influx of calls, we are going to take those things, and we're going to understand that parents need to be able to make that decision. And you know, a lot of times maybe the parents aren't thinking and remembering that they can do this, and so they're calling us frantically. We would much rather call them and say, hey, you know you have this option. Yeah, students get the messages, high school kids, middle school kids can be very persuasive. I get it, got one too now. Okay, very persuasive. And just like I just said, we would hope that parents are having conversations with their children ahead of time saying, don't even call me, or do call me if you feel unsafe because I want you to come home. Whichever side of the track you're on, that's a family decision, that's a parent decision. And parents need to be parents too. We can't do that all. We provide every opportunity we can. We have a safe place. We're not leaving till the last kid leaves. They can stay there as long as they want. But also, if you know, maybe if when my child becomes a driver, maybe my mindset might change, and I see it coming, and I think, okay, we're going to, being in my seat, I have a unique seat. Maybe I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to call my son and say, I'm going to check you out. I want you to go home and get in front of the whatever's coming in, right? So there's not a right or wrong answer. There's not a good or bad answer. It just kind of is, and that's our philosophy. Hopefully by now people are used to it. It hasn't changed. We do that. And like I said, I'm very transparent in my answers, and that's the truth. Now, what leads up to all of that is literally when we know there's a day that there's going to be inclement weather of any kind coming in the middle of the day. Worst possible scenario for a school administrator. No, worse, really. And we had a couple of them last year. Because what do? You call school and the potential is it doesn't come in until 7 o'clock that night and you've got a nice sunny day. But if it does come in, we literally, for that day, and I'll say Dr. Simon and myself and the people I talked about that drove the roads, we clear our schedule. We're in constant contact with the meteorologists, trying to get the best input we can. We're talking to the schools, we're talking to different people, and just trying to gather information the best we can. And being that human side of us, trying to make the best decision we possibly can for this humongous mass number of people that look to us for those answers. But it is a real concern of ours, because anytime parents are upset or concerned about something we do procedurally, we are always looking at that. And from the first time we did it 3 years ago, I think, we have continued to look at it, and we've still done it. So based on everything we've looked at, it's still worth putting that out there on the premise of we'd rather parents know and be able to make decisions, whether it's weather or anything else, as opposed to not know and wish they had.
I know you said it was last question. I have one quick follow-up. Hopefully
Yep.
It's a short answer. Is it your intent when that happens, when you invite parents to come check their kids out? Is it the district's intent that instruction continue that day? Because the stories that I've heard about say that there is, especially at the middle school and the high school level, that there is no chance at all for instruction to continue.
It is mass exodus, and get it, but I want to clarify, we are not inviting you to come check your kid out. We're reminding you that you have the opportunity if you feel like they're not safe. You have that opportunity as a parent to make a parental decision, right? So
the broadcast comes across as an invitation.
Well, and I get that, and we're not going to say, hey, you know what, you can check your kid out. Really don't think you should, though. I mean, not going to do that. It's like, here, you have the opportunity to do it, and it's how it's taken. I don't know. It's something that people have to deal with. But as far as instruction, Absolutely, we can completely understand that a lot of kids leave, but our philosophy on that is, our class sizes are huge. There are always kids who need individual help. And if a lot of kids leave, as a teacher, I should be able to take advantage of that opportunity, not necessarily to create and teach new content, but to sit down and have an opportunity to really work with those students that are in my class, that are my responsibility educationally. What a better opportunity to have what we all desire as educators is one-on-one opportunities. And it's not to that level. It's usually about 10 kids, 12 kids left in the class. But we really encourage, and Craig can probably follow that up, but that is the message that Dr. Sino and all of us have sent out to the teachers is, you know what, it is not our expectation that you throw a movie in, or that you just sit and tell kids to sit back and listen to your iPods. If they are doing that, we actually ask our principals to address that, because that is not the intent, and that's a wasted day. We would expect them to do some kind of instruction, and whether you like it or not. So did I answer?
Yes, thank you.
Great.
All right, for Dr. Valerino, let's give him a round of applause. He's got to get out of here.
Yeah, you're in trouble.
Yeah, you're in trouble. Blame it on Matt. Yes. So, as you can see, right there, the more that we communicate with our parents about the policies in place, the better that I think these policies are going to be executed. There's going to be less panic. We're not going to be like, wait, do I have to leave work right now to go get them? So address that at an upcoming PTA meeting, especially as we hit tornado season, because we get it not only with bad incoming winter weather, but we also get it, what happened in Warren? We all got the warnings. So, as we know, we can make the decisions we need to be the best parents that we can, but make sure your parents know about that. That's what I want. So we're going to go back to introducing yourselves and then throw questions at you. All right? Sound good? Take it away, Harold.
I'm Harold Brooks. I'm a senior research scientist at NOAA's National Severe Storms Laboratory here in Norman. Work-wise, in theory, I know as much about where and when tornadoes occur around the planet as anybody. And I was part of the group that did that actually recruited people to do the safety plans. I personally went through Whittier, Jefferson, Wilson, Dimensions, and long ago when my kids were there, I went through McKinley. I had two kids who went through McKinley, Alcott, Norman. My wife teaches at Whittier for 5 years. She got down to 3 last year from class. I think one of them was his kid. And I long ago I did safety plans at Moore Central Junior High. And the after May 3rd, their teachers would not return to school. Some of them would not return to school to teach the aftermath of that tornado. That was a very bad setup in the school. And then Norman North years ago. I also watch nationally response of how things happen. I've been involved with emergency managers and officials and how the human decision-making process is done in things. For instance, today there were a bunch of schools in Alabama that closed on forecast at 11 a.m. to noon when the weather wasn't supposed to get to them until at least 9 p.m. And I'm sitting here going, really? They closed the schools. This is not a you check your kid out. This is we're all gone. And some of those schools actually have shelters in them, which makes about as little sense as I can imagine. And I'm sort of the as a result of the fact that I've also regarded as something of an expert on death in tornadoes. It's one of my little morbid hobbies. And I tend to become a little dispassionate as a result because that's simply the only way I can deal with it. And so I know all the statistics of everything that's happened, and otherwise I just, I have to kind of turn my head off. We can get into that on if that's good enough introduction.
Yeah. Give you a summary of what he's going to contribute to the panel today. All right.
Well, my job is not as cool as his or anybody else's, but my name is Tony Hill, and I'm with the American Red Cross here in Oklahoma City chapter. Basically, I have 3 jobs within the Red Cross. I am a volunteer. I actually work for a living. I work at Tinker Air Force Base. But what I do for American Red Cross, I'm a DAC team member, what stands for Disaster Action Team Member. I am the boot on the ground when a disaster happens. whether it's a single-family fire, a multi-family fire, whether it's wildfire, tornado, police standoff, anything that relates to a disaster, man-made or natural, I'm one of the first boots on the ground, along with about 34 other individuals that cover pretty much central and southwest Oklahoma. I also, part of this is I'm a disaster preparedness presenter and educator. And I go around to various places and do table events within the community, teach about basically how to prepare. In Red Cross, we have a thing called Be Red Cross Ready. Means educating people to make a plan, educating people to be informed, and educating people to put a preparedness kit together. So when a disaster does happen and you have to bug out or shelter in place, you have at least a 3-day supply. And you can bunker down, or again, if the meteorologist says leave, and most of you know, you just grab a to-go bag and you go wherever your safe place is. So that's what I do within the American Red Cross. Again, my job is not as cool as the rest of these, but I'm willing to field any questions. We have, just so you know, we have 3 programs that we're working real hard to do. We have what's called a pillowcase project, which is we're going into schools and educating the kids at a certain grade, at a certain age level about preparedness. As we found out dealing a couple years ago with the loss of children in a disaster, that a lot of kids had a lot of anxiety behind it. So we educate the kids to be responsible, to understand what's going on when they don't really know. We have educated over 700 kids so far. Our goal is to educate every kid in Oklahoma. That's our goal, and we're working towards that. We also have another program. We are doing fire canvassing. We're going into communities and we're checking people's homes to make sure they have an active working smoke alarm. There's no good to have a smoke alarm when you take the batteries out and it just sits there and it does not work. Most fires can be prevented, lives being lost because of fire alarm. We can get the early warning. So we're going in those communities. Red Cross has a target. We're trying to reduce our fires by 25% by 2012. 2020. So we're working hard. We've been in a couple of communities here in Norman. We've been in communities all over Oklahoma. So that's what our couple of programs we got going on. Somebody mentioned about earthquakes. That's a new one to us. We generally don't deal with earthquakes. I mean, as we know, we got the ice storms, snowstorms, wildfires, zoos running animals around. You know, we got it all. Earthquakes is new to Red Cross. As we're learning more about it, we will be able to go out in the community, educate the community what to do when there's an earthquake. So that is forthcoming. We're not experts at it currently, but we will be soon. That's all I got. Unless somebody has something else.
That was exactly what I wanted. Look at all the programs right there that you can bring back to your PTA. That's awesome. All right.
Whatever he said. He covered fire. No. Anyway, I'm Mike Mandry. I do a lot that nobody really knows about. I'm a captain of the Norman Fire Department. My station is Station 2. I'm on sea crew. I'm also a paramedic. I've been a paramedic for 19 years with 17 in staff. I'm a SWAT medic for the Norman Police Department. So if I see you on that side, you're doing something really wrong, you need to stop. But
the Red Cross brings you really cool food.
Yes, I love the Red
Cross.
Cross. When we're stuck out and it's freezing cold and things are burning down everywhere, these guys show up, and they're a huge help. I guess we could kind of talk about a little what we do at the fire station, and we have programs where children come in and we'll do tours. And kind of in the tours we talk about smoke detectors, don't play with matches, we go over the stop, drop, and roll, just trying to make sure that they know if you're turning the clock back, you might want to change your smoke detector batteries, and make sure you check them from time to time. The city of Norman is a fantastic place to work because we all work so well together. The police, the fire, the EMS, we all know each other. We work well together. We share information. We just updated our new CAD program, which it's interesting because the CAD program has what they call layers. And it's a computer that we have in the brush rigs, we have it in the fire engines, and when you build a storm shelter in the city of Norman and you bring it to the city and register it, it gets put on the map, and you can actually select that layer, and it will post that storm shelter in your residence on that street. So if the tornado does come through and takes every street sign out, the system that we have in place, we can know what street we're on, we know which houses have shelters, and we can hopefully get out there and find people in a timely manner. Now, that being said, whenever you have a natural disaster, and I've worked the tornadoes up in Moore and the tornadoes in Norman, and there has to be a sense of community working together there too. Yes, fire, police, EMS, we're all going to be there, but we can't be there just in a second, because there's, it tears down cell phone towers, it messes with the radio communications, so we really just have to go out and start searching. And that also helps if I know my neighbor and they know me and they know I have a shelter and I know they have a shelter and my house was hit and theirs wasn't. It's almost like a buddy system. Come check on me, I'll come check on you, let's rescue ourselves. If we're hurt, then we'll find somebody and get that chain started as far as getting help into our neighborhood. So, flooding, we've had some flooding issues in May. We ran into a situation on Indian Hills where it was basically the Mississippi River running through Indian Hills. And we had an inflatable boat, and we had to get to some people drowning in the car, and no matter what we tried to do with that boat, it just washed it away. So we had to call Edmond and Del City and Moore and those to come down from the north side, and they had powered boats. And they were actually able to help us get from point A to point B and put the ropes out and get these people out of their cars. So when that happened, everybody said, whoa, hold up, we need some boats. We need some real boats. So now we have 2 boats, and they're stationed in town. So now we have that ability to help people in flooding situations in Norman. So we're really starting to progress and recognize our ability to help people in all types of situations. I'm trying to think of something else. One key thing, remember, never put water on a grease fire. I'm going to just say it right. Don't put water on a grease fire.
And don't drive when it's flooding, because you put up the barricades and people drive through them anyway, and it's just constant.
Right on McGee. We'll put barricades up. Hey. We'll have 15 calls that night. Somebody will pull their car up, get out of their car, drag the barricade off the road, stick it on the shoulder, drive into the floodwater and die. I mean, we'll stall out. The car will die. So then we have to come over. So we have to come out, and we got to push them out of the water, pull the barricade back, go back to the fire station. 20 minutes later, got a car stalled over McGee.
So stay off the roads when they tell you.
If it looks like it's flooded, don't try it.
If it's drizzled, stay off of
McGee, it's bad. But I think they're making improvements for it.
Mary, you got a question?
About that. Last year during the flash flooding, it happened while a lot of parents were at a school event. They were at their kids' play, and they came out and they were seriously on buried. It was 2 foot of water all the way up to the side of the. So what is the best practice when you come out of the performance and you might hear on your phone that you're under flash flood warning? What should we, like, we're sponsoring events and it's happening after school hours, what should we have done? Because I know a lot of people were driving all into that flooded water.
It's hard to say. It's kind of those hindsight things. If you have a high-profile vehicle, one that, or if you know somebody that has one, somebody that has something that's going to be above the water level where it won't get into the air intake of the vehicle, you're generally safe to get down residential streets. Now, it's the real danger is when it's moving water. Moving water 1 foot deep can sweep somebody off their feet very easily. But standing water, like what happens over on, we didn't push out any pickup trucks on those flood days. It was always passenger cars, low profile. So, in a way, and this brings me to another topic, in a way, you kind of want to test to see how deep it is, because you really can't tell. We lost a firefighter up in northeast Oklahoma because he was swept into a drainage ditch and got caught up in the debris. So even in our case, you know, you go out there with our poles or pipe poles or something like that, and we're testing to see how deep it is. But there's obstacles under the ground that you can't really see, like drainage ditches and stuff like that. And then unfortunately we lost somebody
So
doing
get a
that.
ride with somebody that has a higher vehicle. Just
It's
your car in the
safer.
parking lot.
It's safer to have someone with a higher profile vehicle. So you give your husband an excuse to go out and buy a big pickup.
I was just thinking about that.
And one of the other important things on that one night, my wife had to go pick something up at Whittier, and it took us 30 minutes to do what's normally a 5-minute drive home. And what the other thing is, you have to make sure people just know to be patient. I mean, we sat, and I'm going. There were spots that night. I mean, where everything that floods in Norman normally is, but there were a heck of a lot of spots that night that were high that I'd never seen water there at all.
Right in front of Station 8.
Yeah, I in fact didn't realize there was one spot. There was a low spot on the road. It's like, really? And so we ended up just sitting there watching. We pulled off in somebody's driveway and sat there for about 15 minutes and watched the water go down and watched the water go down. And okay, well, we can probably do it now. But we basically said, we're not going to be in a hurry. Even though I knew I wasn't going to die in the water, I did think, boy, we could really screw the vehicle up pretty badly tonight if I get in it. I didn't want to do that. Just the hassle factor for me. So I think one of the big things is just to let people know that be patient and don't be in a hurry, which is usually why people get into trouble in the water anyways. They've decided that they have to get somewhere very, very quickly.
We had one, I think one other topic I want to talk about was, okay, let's say that you are an affected area that's been hit by a tornado. Working in those areas, you have to realize that, I'll just end it with this. Your house is constructed with nails and wood. Tornado hits it, and if your safe place is a inner closet, bathroom, whatever, where you're taking your shelter, or if it's underneath in the carport or something, everything that is disassembled and laying out there for you to get stuck with. So I always advise people that if they are unfortunate enough to be involved in a situation like that and you're trying to get out of their residence, wear heavy clothing, maybe some leather gloves, heavy sole shoes, and always, before we had our storm shelter, I put the bicycle helmets on the kids and stuff, just anything to protect their head, because there's flying objects, we have impalement issues and stuff like that. So just and of course you want your to-go kit, first aid kit, everything like that.
With the pillowcase idea, that might be something that your kids could be trained. If there's an emergency, you grab your pillowcase, you know where your helmet will, in theory, they know where their helmet is. So have a backup in the shelter anyways. But so I mean, they can own their own emergency preparedness, which I think is very important, because part of, I think, reducing anxiety is confidence in your own skills and handling a situation. So I love the pillowcase idea. So I was going to ask you, how does one go about requesting, what grade are you talking about, and how would a PTA contact you? I'm guessing in association with the principal, because it'd be a joint thing.
Because that is not my field, the pillowcase, I'm going to put a recommendation that you contact our chapter at 228-9500, which is the Oklahoma City chapter, and one of our personnel there will be able to educate you on how to go about requesting Red Cross to come out and teach your school and what certain grades we target.
And I'm guessing it's elementary.
Yes, it is.
I would love to see 100% of our schools having Red Cross out. It's time to be prepared. So I encourage all of you, and I'll send that out in the follow-up of today's meeting to make sure that you take that step and follow through.
As a side note, that's just a pillowcase. We will come out and educate our community. Myself and a bunch of other people. We won't talk about pillowcase, but we will educate our community. It can be a PTA meeting like this. It can be in a church. It can be in a town hall. You just request us, come out. We will come out and educate as much as we can. Yes, sir.
So you're at the Oklahoma City chapter up by the Capitol?
Yes, I am.
There's a Norman chapter of Red Cross.
It is actually, that chapter is basically not active.
Okay.
It is still there. We have people working out of it, but everything, we went into a new organizational thing where we combine Arkansas and Oklahoma together, and that's just one casualty of that.
So the nearest
20.
place with all the good stuff is up by the Capitol.
We are all centered out at Oklahoma City off 6th Street. So
one more thing I want to kind of bring up is have a plan. It's really important for the people at home, parents, have a plan with your children. If this happens, this is what we're going to do. House catches on fire, we get out, we meet at the mailbox. Or you have to have accountability for all the kids. There's a couple little techniques you can kind of learn about house fires. One is you want to make sure, if you have an older house, you want to make sure the windows aren't painted shut. So you need to make sure your child knows how to open and close the windows in the house and make sure they're not painted shut. And there's another technique where you sleep with your doors closed. And you want to make sure that your smoke detectors are in a position where they're in the higher part of the house. If something does catch on fire, smoke goes up, sets the detectors off. Your child knows when the smoke detector goes off, I exit out the window, rendezvous at the mailbox. Just make sure you have a little plan together.
and that's valuable, regardless of what the disaster is, to have a plan, to have a rendezvous place, to know what to do. Really, the plan for a lot of people, because I'm just going to use this as an example. In Moore, when a tornado happened, people came out of a storm shelter and was disoriented. They didn't know where they were at. They couldn't recognize any landmarks within their own neighborhood. They didn't know where to go. So when you make a plan, have an alternate route out of your community. You know, best thing is to know your neighbor as well. Okay? Another thing with the plan, we all depend on our cell phone as means of communicating. Cell phone towers went down. How are you going to communicate if you get separated from your loved ones? What we have found out, and this is a promotion from Red Cross, is if you are going to use your cell phone, and as we know, just like in Moore, when the cell phones went down, you couldn't make local calls. Only calls you can receive was out-of-state calls. So have an out-of-state contact where if you get separated and you need to check in, there's two means of doing it. One is have an out-of-state contact, somebody out of the 4 or 5 area that you can relay back and forth. Hey, I'm okay. Let my mother know I'm okay. I'm here. And you can bounce that back and forth. Another means is Red Cross has a program called Safe and Well, where you can call in to report where you at to check on somebody else. And Red Cross, through our means of communicating, we will find out. And that is not necessarily local. We will go international and do that as well.
And building on the awesomeness of American Red Cross and the promotion, I had talked to Cassandra Jansing at a nonprofit luncheon, and she had said, and I didn't realize it, that a lot of the donations you make to American Red Cross stay in Oklahoma. Not 100% of them, but can you answer that one?
If you want your donor dollars to stay in Oklahoma, you have to specify this is for Oklahoma, because all money, without being designated, goes in a big bank. And that bank is out of Washington, D.C. So if you want your donor dollars to stay in Oklahoma, you have to say it's for Oklahoma.
So
you can actually target to an event if you want to. Yes, ma'am.
I have a comment about the fire department, because one of the things that I noticed, that a lot of people, if their house is gone, there's no address and the street signs are gone. Painting it on the curb, having the address on the curb really helps the orientation for first responders.
Okay.
And it helps the people in your neighborhood, so you can actually identify where you are by having that painted on your curb.
That helps without tornadoes. I'm serious. We're going down the street 2 o'clock in the morning, and everybody's got the porch lights off, and they have little bitty numbers. And then, and if we can see the curb address, we know where we are. Plus, they can do CAD system, all the mapping stuff's there too, available for us.
With that, can you register safe rooms the way you can register shelters?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same thing.
Okay.
If as long as you register with the city, then they plot it on the map, and you choose that layer, and it'll put it on your.
And the building permits help with that too.
I got my permits.
I'm not sure how fast the turnaround is though
It's
from
pretty fast.
registering to putting it in, but.
GIS system, GIS people pretty fast.
I'm from New Jersey, so when I moved down here in tornadoes, trouble with the nor'easters, residents on fire. Tornadoes were new. Now, I understand one doesn't have any like public shelters. Is there a reason why that I mean, because up until 2 years ago, there was only one storm shelter there was no storm shelter on Oceanic. So, I mean, in order for me to get to a storm shelter, I was driving across town to my mother-in-law's house, because that was the only place I knew of that was for a shelter.
Yeah, in general, the Emergency Management Committee doesn't like public shelters in large cities at all, because you have traffic issues.
Right.
Norman used to have places that they called shelters that were varying quality. And the last time that I am aware of people going to them was Cleveland in 2011, May 24th, 2011. And they had a problem that the shelter, I believe, was intended for somewhere on the order of several hundred people. And they had 3 times that many people show up. And at that point, you've got 1,500 people hanging around outside with no place to go. And so that's a real problem. In general, we recommend sheltering in place. I mean, tornado. This is one of the things that people don't particularly appreciate, is that people who were inside of houses that were not had nothing specially well built, just your ordinary built house. This is not a mobile home. This is an ordinary constructed house that received F4 and F5 damage. The survival rate in those is on the order of 98 to 99%. I mean, if you get as low as you can, put as many walls as you can, it's not a guarantee, but you're probably going to make it if you do the right thing.
I just think because my house really, it does not have a center area to go into.
Yeah.
So until my neighbors moved in and put in a storm shelter.
What we had in our house. I mean, again, we come back to the fact that I can be really cold and dispassionate about this stuff. My wife and I had a plan. We had to do a new kitchen. Okay, that was the first thing. But then we were going to do an addition a few years after that out of the house. And from day one, the plan was we will put in an in-resident shelter when we put that shelter in, when we put the addition in. Prior to that, we had a hallway that was between 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. And that was where our kids. That's where we went. And I was comfortable. I mean, I didn't really want to get the house hit. I admit that. And now I'm a heck of a lot more comfortable because I've got the shelter. But that's what when we did the new construction, we thought it was worth doing a shelter. And we also made the decision that our shelter is on the living level. It's not below ground. And that was simply because of, at some point in our lives, we realized that there's a chance that 3 or 4 steps may be a great challenge. And so being able to, in theory, I can be in bed, and maybe from bed into our shelter, which is the walk-in closet for our master bedroom suite, in 15 seconds. And so that's what we decided to do. And again, I mean, I know the odds. That's and at times it's hard to really remember that I know them. And I think one of the things that is recognizing how rare tornadoes are anywhere. I mean, that's one of the big things, and particularly schools. We had the incident with Plaza Towers a few years ago. Anybody have any ideas when the last time before that someone was killed in a school in Oklahoma during school day? No, there were 2 incidents of a basketball practice that took place at some point in the evening, and a residential school where it was a dormitory got hit. That doesn't count. But in the school during the school day. 1930.
70 years.
In Bethany. Those are the 2 times that people have been killed in schools in the state of Oklahoma. Roughly 8% of all tornadoes in the state of Oklahoma happen during the school day. So most of your big thing is when you're at home. And in fact, if I ran all of the public policy things in the world and was going to invest in safety, it'd be getting shelters in for residents, because that's where you are most of the time.
How do you feel about neighborhood shelters, like as new neighborhoods develop in Norman?
I'm not real thrilled. Okay, one of the things is, if I have to make a decision at 10 o'clock at night that I'm going to walk outside in the rain and the hail to go to a place, if I have to do any thought that I'm not going that I have to be uncomfortable. In reality, that's it. People, as well as one of the other challenges is, and this happened at Cleveland that night, is community shelter. You taking your dog? I mean, we had people who ended up in the ER that night because of dog bites.
And didn't people get into altercations too?
Oh, altercations. Oh yeah. I mean, there's a lot of. It's a stressful situation. Your animals are in a stressful situation. Even your nice, polite little, likes everybody dog. You put 1,000 people around them, somebody steps on it and things happen. it's hard to stop people from coming to places. The National Weather Center, one of the events 2 years ago, we did have, we have people, it's not a shelter. It's intended, there is shelter facility for the occupants of the building. It doesn't matter, we still have 1,500 people show up. Yeah, and there's nothing we can really do to say.
Be on, people.
So, a couple of the forecasters, looking out the window, if you've been in the Weather Center, you can look in the glass windows where the forecasters are. A couple of the forecasters talked about watching unleashed pit bulls walk down in front of the forecast area. Because people just let their dogs wander in the building, which... No, I don't know what to do with that. But the real thing is, you get as low as you can, put as many walls between you and tornado as possible, know that it's a rare event, and if you do the right thing, you're almost certainly going to make it. Mobile homes are the special thing. And at that point, if you live in a mobile home, you need to have a plan to be you need to be moving quickly. If you wait for the warning, it is too late. And when they talk about having a plan, one of the biggest things about having a plan is that in anything in life, if you think about it, when there's stress, you don't make very good decisions frequently. If you have a plan and you go, okay, this is the thing I do next. Okay, that lowers the stress and you think about it. My wife and kids, if I'm at home, our plan is different, admittedly, than if I'm not at home. My wife has used our shelter much more often than I have. I've been in it one time, and I was thinking the whole time, this is really stupid. We shouldn't be getting in here. We don't need to be. We're okay. I called my wife a couple times, and she said, I'm in the shelter, and I'm going. And what she had done was she had done what we talked about doing. And that if I'd been sitting there looking at radar, I would have gone, we don't need to do anything. And that's, I don't expect it. My daughter used the shelter on May 20th, the day of the Moore tornado, when she thought we were safe, and then we lost cell coverage, we lost cable TV, and she said, you know what? I'm not waiting to find anything out. I'm in the shelter. And so the kids know, our kids know what to do, and that's, I think, the biggest thing is sheltering in place is the strong preference of most of the emergency managers in the country. Unless you're in a really small town, and which might everybody get to it.
For Captain Manager, do you guys have any capability of monitoring emergency frequencies like 242 like in 121.25?
What we have, we have our little 800 megahertz radios. Another thing I was going to say is we're actually building, I think, 7 or 8 new towers in the future, so we're going to have better coverage. Because that's another problem we have during tornadoes is we're maybe 3 towers we're hitting off of around the area, and if one of them goes down, we could lose a large area of coverage where we can get on the radio and talk to each other.
I've got personal locator beacons in my house. I'm in the military and they broadcast on 242. Now, I don't have a storm shelter, so I don't have anything that's registered through the city. If I pop that button, of course, trapped inside a house, is there a way that you guys communicate with, say, Civil Air Patrol? And they say, we've got this beacon going off at this location. Something maybe.
Not that I know of.
I didn't see that question coming.
Yeah, I know we have some ham radio operators that meet over there at Station 7, and they do a lot of radio, but we're limited on the channels that we operate on.
Those 2 frequencies are aviation only frequencies, and so any air support that happens during the aftermath of a disaster will be monitoring at least the 121.5. Military is going to monitor the 243.0 as well, but
we're in communication with Max Westheimer too. They do a lot of they do their radio testing with us every morning.
So the OHP's got. If for no other reason, because it's really annoying to have to listen to that. I've been there and done that.
I just wanted to say one thing. You talked about above ground if you can. I had an underground to put in, and I wasn't home when they were doing it. And the first step down is so deep that I can't get in it. And the last step is the same way. I finally got in it. I couldn't get out almost. I had to had to work for quite some time, because I'm older, and it is hard, so I'm going to have an above ground put in, because it was, and my neighbors can use it. They're tall, they can make the step, but
You
be
could
careful that
probably-
you haven't it done,
Could you
because
I was thinking, they're just welded in there. You could probably weld
that's
two
what I
more
think.
steps in there. Well, and just the brace, because it's just a piece of, a 2x4 that's carpeted. But usually all they have to do is weld another brace in there and probably put 2 more steps in
but
it.
I just warn people to be paying attention when it's done.
That would, we were, I mean, as part of my job, I need to be a collector of anecdotes of, what happened to people. And there was an indirect death on the May 3rd, 99 tornado that was a son and daughter-in-law, or daughter and son-in-law, that dropped an elderly gentleman in a wheelchair down the steps of the shelter. They were 3 miles away from the path. I mean, the tornado didn't come close to them. And that was actually the moment when my wife and I said, we're not going to have a below ground shelter. But that's, at that point, you have to have, where am I going to put it? Which become, and so when we did the addition, this was our easy plan. But it's but you have to make your own decision about how you're.
And that's essentially what Norman's doing with the remodels and the bond issue.
Right.
Is a lot of the buildings that they're building are how we're getting the storm rated stuff. They're not gutting. I mean, sometimes they are, but.
Yeah, I mean, to me, look, when I try to do the cost benefit analysis of, how often do fatalities happen in schools and all that, to me, it's really difficult to justify the cost for retrofitting, because retrofitting is expensive. But if you're building new stuff, I mean, on our house, it added 2% to the addition. It was like, I don't even notice that in the mortgage payment. And so that it was a real easy. If they would have, I know it would have cost me several $1,000s out of pocket to retrofit the old house, and that was more money than I was willing to put out on its own.
Well, guys, it's 8 o'clock. We try to end in an hour and a half, and we've reached our mark. I will make sure to get contact information from all of our panel members and send it to council presidents and delegates, unit presidents and delegates, to make sure that you have their information so you can follow up with any questions that you may have. Well, let's give them a round of applause. Don't forget that Matthew and Alicia are going to hang behind if you have any questions. We've also put some voter registration forms out there. There's also flyers from CC's. And I also wanted to mention, Yes All Daughters is having the talk. It's to train parents on how to talk to your kids about some things that I'm nervous about talking to my kids about, like sex and STDs, things like that. But the goal of the program is to educate parents so we know what to tell our children. It's totally free. It's February 13th from 10 to 12:30 p.m. in the multi-purpose room of the, what do they call it at Norman at High? There, you just left. The conference center, that's what it is, yes. And it's, like I said, totally free, and Zaxby's, really trying to get out there, will be providing the lunch for that. So I hope you will at least share that with your units, especially our middle school and high schools, because if we're not having these talks, we're setting our kids up for failure. I really do. And if you think they're not doing it or not talking about it themselves, you're naive. I hate to break it to you. But that's how it is. So, with that, I also wanted to give away our things, and I didn't have you do a drawing because I forgot. So, I want to give the 2 new faces tonight. Thank you for coming. As you can see, we provide quality programs. We really do. This was awesome tonight. I learned a lot. I already feel better about the upcoming season. Invite your members. It's not just the presidents that can come, it's everybody. This was a program that was applicable to everybody in Norman. So, thank you guys for coming again, and with that, we will, what? Oh, I was like, did I forget something? Okay. It's been a busy day. We will adjourn at 8:02. Thank you very much. 8 more food. 8 more food. I'm coming.